All right, hey everybody. I'm here with Congressman Brendan Boyle, ranking member on the Budget Committee for the Democrats. Before we get to the Republican budget resolution that came out today, which has some pretty eye-popping numbers in it, I guess congrats are in order. You're an Eagles fan. I saw you down here in New Orleans over the weekend. A big victory. Are you still celebrating? Or?
Yeah, I'm still on the high. I gave floor speech on my resolution congratulating the Eagles on being Super Bowl champions. I said it was the happiest speech I've ever given on the House floor in my 10 years being here. I promised him I will not use up all the time to talk about this, even though I could. As a Philly sports fan growing up in the 80s and 90s, I went 100 consecutive seasons without a championship. 25 years each of Eagles, Phillies, 76ers, and Flyers from the time I was in first grade until I was 31 years old. So this recent success of the Eagles and the Phillies is definitely something I'm not taking for granted.
Well, the Philly people kind of like to be sad. So, you like to be angry. So this doesn't actually...
We like to celebrate, too.
I don't know if the celebration wears as well on you as the anger, but it's okay. I congratulate you. I gave an ode to Jalen Hurts at the end of Monday's podcast, despite being an Alabama guy. Just nothing but... just so impressed with the way he's handled himself. So congrats, but we got to get down to business. Now you got to get another win, I think, on these budget negotiations, and that might be a tougher battle. Here's just a summary. I'll give the brief summary what I see from the Republicans' budget resolution here, and then we'll get your kind of top line takes. But essentially, what this is they kind of laid out a marker for how much they are planning on spending, right? And there's like a limit on what the details are here. But what it would essentially come down to is about a $4 trillion increase in the debt, mostly due to the extension of the tax cuts, about a $4.5 trillion tax cut extension, adding some money for Homeland Security and for the judiciary. You guys tell me what that is. I'm assuming it's going to be border stuff. And then a bunch of cuts, most notably $880 billion energy and commerce. I assume that's going to be mostly Medicaid, $230 billion in ag. I assume that'll be mostly food stamps, $50 billion in oversight cuts. So net, we're going to be cutting funds for poor people, cutting funds for anybody that can hold Donald Trump accountable, and paying for that with big tax cuts, and also throwing a little dollop of border security on top. Did I pretty much cover it?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And tomorrow morning we will have a markup, basically the Budget Committee, on which I'm the lead Democrat, the ranking member. We will be marking up, or Capitol Hill speak, for voting out this horrible proposal. It'll take all day, and frankly, what I'm going to say tomorrow is basically verbatim of what you just laid out. When you add it all together, it is a massive betrayal of the very people that Donald Trump says he fights for. He's Mr. Blue Collar guy who goes to professional wrestling fights and has conned a bunch of people that he's somehow making the Republican Party the party of the working class. But here's their proposal. It's $4.5 trillion of tax cuts, most of which actually go to the top 1%. They don't pay for all of them, so they're going to be adding a couple trillion to the national debt, the national debt that they always cry about and pretend to be so concerned about when there's a Democrat in the White House. But they are going to pay for some of that tax cut, and it's $880 billion of tax cuts, $880 billion of cuts to Medicaid, as well as to those who are on Obamacare. You are also going to have further cuts, smaller cuts, but still a few $100 billion of food stamps. So you're going to hurt kids, essentially, who primarily benefit from that program. So, it is unfortunately not surprising. You and I both know Donald Trump is a fraud. He's really about the crowd he hangs out with at Mar-a-Lago, and not the folks he said he was fighting for. It is a massive Republican betrayal of the people they said that they were going to make their lives better.
Yeah, I've got a couple of specific things to go into, but just on the SNAP and Medicaid. I'm just pulling this up right now. The states getting the most in SNAP benefits: my state, Louisiana, Oklahoma, West Virginia, also Illinois, which is a blue state. If you look at the Medicaid percentage by state, You do have a lot in D.C. and New Mexico, but then after that, again, it's red states. It's Louisiana again. It's West Virginia. It's Kentucky, Arkansas. I mean, how are they possibly going to rationalize funding all of this on the backs of these programs that disproportionately serve states that they or where their voters are from?
Well, I mean, you know this. They'll deny it. They'll say it's not true. Basically, they'll lie. And they will have a whole media ecosystem on the far right, Newsmax and certain X accounts and others that will regurgitate that lie. They realize that the math is overwhelmingly against them, but they don't care. And so, traditional media will call them on it. You'll call them on it. But the reality is, and part of the challenge that I think we have in this environment is pushing back against this sort of fact-free, conspiracy-based information ecosystem that has really grown up over the last, 6, 8, 10 years?
Yeah. I'm going to look at the ag part of this budget in particular. So the SNAP benefits are under that, right? This sort of outline that they put forth was the $230 billion, which we've been discussing in cuts. But that's complicated. The ag situation is going to be complicated for them. They haven't passed a farm bill. In the last Trump administration, they did $28 billion in bailouts for farmers to pay for tariffs.
Right.
We're already seeing anecdotes from farmers who are pissed right now because they're trying to pull back that money that they've contracted to them for the IRA. So I'm just you've got a lot of farmland out there in the non-Philly part of Pennsylvania. I'm just wondering how you think that math is going to math for them, particularly when it comes to the rural and ag part of this.
Pennsylvania is actually the second biggest farm state in the country. I know, probably a lot of people are surprised by that. So it will have a real impact on my home state as well. I think that, and this is part of why I'm optimistic about this fight, or at least cautiously optimistic. They got a real challenge on their hands on the other side. First, it is no guarantee that they will be able to get this proposal out of the Budget Committee tomorrow, which is the first step and an absolutely critical step that would enable them to use reconciliation, which is, a word they'll make most normal people's eyes glaze over. But basically, reconciliation is the way they can do all this because it's the way they can avoid the filibuster and jam this through. It has very tight, arcane rules they have to follow. And step number one is getting this bill passed out of the Budget Committee tomorrow. They can only lose 3 Republicans, and there are 2 Freedom Caucus members on the committee who have expressed skepticism so far. Then even if they get that step and they get all of the other committees that have to chime in on these either cuts or deficit increased spending, it has to pass the full House where the math is 218 to 215. So if 2 House Republicans, when it comes to final passage, vote with us, the thing is killed. They still haven't solved SALT. They still have this issue of certain Midwest Republicans who want to keep the IRA tax credits. You have the food stamp issue that you brought up, which helps certain ag constituencies. And then, oh, by the way, here's another interesting one. Remember how Donald Trump went around campaigning saying no tax on tips, no taxes on Social Security benefits, no taxes on overtime? Guess what's not in the bill? None of that stuff that I just talked about. You got it. None of that stuff that I just talked about, that Donald Trump's main priorities. And my understanding is when he had them down to Mar-a-Lago not too long ago, he made clear that he wanted that in the tax bill. Well, the reconciliation bill that we're voting on tomorrow to vote out of Budget Committee does not allow for any of that. It only allows for the extension of the original Trump tax cuts from 2017.
All right, 2 more things, and I'll let you get back to work. There's some inflation numbers out this morning.
Terrible.
We see an uptick in inflation. Looking at this budget through that prism, it's also inflationary, right? The idea of they're adding, depending on how you look at it. My old colleague Mark Caputo is doing the math to about 3.3 trillion as an increase in the deficit. I think you could probably look at this and think that it's 4 or more. That is not going to do anything to address like the core problem that that they said that they were going to address, right? I mean, there's nothing in here that makes you think that this is going to help lower grocery prices or address any of the concerns about inflation.
Yeah, so kind of a funny coincidence. Remember when Trump did the big photo op pretending to work at McDonald's?
Uh-huh.
That happens to be the same McDonald's that my family goes to, and that I'll use the same drive-through to pick up a Happy Meal for our daughter. I'm well aware of how prices fast food. I know we're probably not responsible parents getting fast food for our daughter, but
twice a week is fine. Okay, you got to have a veggie healthy dinner, balance and all things.
We're pretty busy. Our daughter likes a Happy Meal. It's a Friday night, so
my daughter had a Happy Meal last night. No one can accuse me of
being an elitist when they look at our eating habits. But anyway, I keep waiting now for that Happy Meal to go back to what it was in 2019 and before the pandemic. Hasn't happened yet. In fact, what are we seeing on egg prices? Even going up more. Trump's policies, whether it's on the tariffs or ballooning the national debt, they all have an effect on inflation. They make it worse, which means that interest rates won't be able to come down, which means mortgage rates won't be able to come down, which means food costs and other costs go up. I mean, you put a 25%. I was talking to a guy in my district in Philadelphia, great entrepreneur, founder of Yards Brewery, just a few blocks from Independence Hall. He talked about the impact that the 25% tariff will have, a 25% tariff on aluminum. He was showing me the cans and what that means per can and then what that means per case of his product. He's going to have to raise prices. Other beer makers will have to as well. That is just one of many concrete examples of how Trump's policies are not going to lower prices. They're actually going to go in the opposite direction and make the inflation challenge worse.
All right, last thing. I've got to harangue you about this every time we talk. Okay, just literally as we were sitting down, I got a text. I guess I should keep this person private, but he said that he thinks that that House Republicans are planning to do a big CR, which is a continuing resolution to deal with the coming potential shutdown of government here about a month from now, a little over a month from now. There's been some in the past. The Democrats have worked with them on continuing resolutions. You do a deal, you come to the table. It's like, you give us some of our priorities, we'll let you kick the can down the road. How are you guys going to be handling that this time around?
Well, first, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If there's a government shutdown, it'll be because Republicans want a government shutdown. That's point number one. And I'm certainly not in the mood to bail them out of their own problems. I mean, can you imagine, by the way, 4 years ago when there was a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, Democratic president, if Democrats had said, well, there's a government shutdown because Republicans. No one would have credibly believed that, and they shouldn't believe it now that the shoe's on the other foot. The other point I would make, we are already in a partial government shutdown. Elon Musk and his Doge bros have gone around shutting down, whether it's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or USAID, who knows what it'll be tomorrow. This rolling partial government shutdown needs to be part of that larger conversation. So I'm pretty emphatic on this point, and I think most of my Democratic colleagues are as well.
Continuing resolution, you're not seeing that happen?
Well, I mean,
and they could do one, I guess, on their own.
Hey, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. Let's see them govern.
All right. We'll be talking about that. We got another month. We'll see what Mike Johnson comes up with. And it's easy to put something down on paper, even though it's a pretty unpopular piece of paper that they put out today. It's easy to do that. The devil's going to be the details on their side, and so we'll be talking to you about that as things develop.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, thanks so much, brother. Congrats on the Eagles, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Go Birds.